Hi, everybody. Welcome to part two in my series on with Galit Romanelli and our series on really infant feeding and being a mom and the transition after birth. So let me introduce in case you missed part one. So Galit Romanelli lives in Israel and she is a mom, a wife. She's a coach. She works with her husband at potentialstate.com. And she's also the founder of M.Other Milk, which if you do the acronym, it'd be mom. M.Other Milk began from her very personal story about the overwhelming issues that followed birth. She heard that every birthing story is different, and so she was prepared for the unexpected. But nobody told her that every feeding story is different, which is really interesting because that's true. We don't talk about it. Nobody shared that breastfeeding is not necessarily easy or pain-free, and certainly nobody told her that it's possible not to produce enough milk. She was completely unprepared and unaware, and hence M.Other Milk was born. You also birthed that too. So
I did. I always joke that it's my third baby. There's a lot of pressure in Israel to have three, and I was like, no, two is sufficient. So mother milk is my third.
There you go. It's so interesting because there are cultural differences, but somehow when it comes to birthing and infant feeding, lactation, it's all the same experiences for women, no matter where you live. If you like, the body is the body, and hence I put my hands, the body is the body, right? All right, so the first one, if you haven't watched it, everybody, our first in the series was about the transition into being a mom, like what that is, and please go and take a look at that because there's some really great nuggets of wisdom in there for new moms, or for if you're a mom and you know somebody who's going to be, like, share them. Like I'm going to encourage my daughter who's 28, no children yet, but I would like her to take a look at that because I think it gives a lot of permission to be ourselves. And, and so this one, Galit, that we talked about, we're going to be talking about intimacy after birth, and that's intimacy not with our babies, but intimacy with our partners. And so what do you want to share about that?
Well, part of me, part of where mother milk was born from, and in general, I've noticed that I like to illuminate the conversations that people don't usually want to have. So the struggles surrounding, the transition into motherhood and infant feeding and all the challenges there, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to illuminate it. I wanted to surface it. And the same goes for intimacy. I think that we don't speak enough about this change, this dramatic change in intimacy and or lack of intimacy right after birth. And I know that for me, being intimate with my partner was the furthest thing from my mind for quite some time. And there's the period right after birth where your body doesn't even feel like it's yours anymore, right? Like I felt totally out of sorts. I felt with both births, and both births were completely different. With my son, I had a completely natural birth, and with my daughter, there was an emergency C-section. So, both came with very different challenges and very different changes in my body. And so being intimate was further from my mind in both cases immediately after the birth. And it took quite some time until I felt ready and I'd say even confident to be intimate again. And then there's the whole kind of, I feel almost like the toddler years where there's so much touching and probing from the little ones that by the end of the day, you stay on your side, I'm going to stay on my side. And I think that, we're very fortunate that we have a very kind of open communicative relationship. where we could really talk about these things. But I think that, if we talk about it with other couples as well, and we talked about it with other parents to kind of check in and like, is this, does this mean something about our relationship? Is this just a phase? Will this pass? And I think that had we not done that, because, we're both like extroverts and we don't shy away from these topics. But I can imagine that had we not, the feelings of kind of loneliness and is this okay? Is this not okay? What does this mean? Could be very consuming and to drive even a bigger wedge between us. But I think this kind of ability to speak about it openly with each other, and I could share and I could say, at the end of the day, I don't want to be touched. I don't want, the kids are literally on me all day. I need space for myself, and the ability to kind of see other and speak with other couples to hear their experiences, and that it is a phase and that we will get past it, was really helpful,
I
really
think that's
helpful.
interesting because when I had my therapy practice, which now it's a divorce practice. So, but when I would see where things went wrong, a lot of times on the if I traced back the genealogy or where the root of the issue was for a lot of men, not
Mm-mm.
necessarily women, but because I don't think women were as in touch with it, but men could see it that there was this wall up that my wife has a new love affair with a baby and I don't know what to do about that. And I don't know. And so when they get to divorce, I'm the first to ask, like, is there any way for repair? Because I know where you can kind of trace a lot of things back. So when I had my practice and kind of was unraveling it to morph it into something else, I would go around and I'm in the States, but I would ask like local birthing centers or lactation, like, how they have all the classes, and I think they probably do where you are too. They have the classes for like showing mom and dad how to do the diapers,
Right.
showing like all these other things, breastfeeding, infant feeding. And I said, could I come in and teach about how this affects the relationship, how the birth is going to affect the partnership, the intimacy, the romance of it.
Right.
And no one wanted to have it. That's being negative. This needs to be a positive time in their lives. And I'd be like, it needs to be a realistic time in their
Right.
lives.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
fake, oh, everyone's going to bond and come together, and around the baby.
Yeah.
That doesn't
Right.
always happen. And so it's so nice
Absolutely.
and refreshing to have this conversation with you, because it's hard to find people that actually have real conversations, and that is real.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also to your point, Colleen, it's really important to have these kind of real conversations in order to set expectations, because I think that what so frequently happens is that if you don't discuss it, if you don't speak about it, if I wouldn't have shared, I don't want to be touched, not because I don't love you, not because I don't want to be close to you, but because of these other things, then I could see how Asael would interpret like, oh, she only has eyes for the baby. She only cares for the baby. And where does that leave me? When in fact, it wasn't that per se. It wasn't that the baby had replaced
Right.
Asael, or that my love, had,
Diminish.
there wasn't enough love to go around. No, it was that I was physically exhausted. It was that I was physically uncomfortable. And
Yep.
it's those things. And I think sometimes rather than explicitly naming them, we kind of try and tiptoe around them, but actually that just causes kind of more distance and more confusion, and then one partner might think, oh, there's a baby now, and so I'm, second, I rate second, when actually that's not what it is at all. And
Well,
and the
that's what I like.
conversation.
That's what I like about the prep work, because to me, if you have a baby and your breastfeeding's going well, or the feeding's going well, or all those things, but if now your marriage, your
Right.
partnership is taking a nosedive, it doesn't matter. You could have wrapped the baby in newspaper and it been okay, right? I mean, as long as you're that marriage, that
Right.
foundational piece for the baby, if that's
Right.
falling apart, but everything else is great, That's
Right.
back asswards, right?
Right. Totally. Totally. That's a miss. And yeah, and I think it's kind of funny, and this is a little bit controversial what I'm about to say, but I know that you don't mind controversy. So, but it's funny because I think that as a child of divorce, I remember everybody was like, it's not the kid, it's never the kid's fault. It's not the kid's fault. You don't ever have to worry. It wasn't because of you. But I remember as a new mom, I was like, oh my God, I can totally see why it's the kid's fault. Like I totally get it now. Like, because it's so hard. The transition is hard. The lack of intimacy is hard. The bridging the gap of the experience. At the end of the day, there's a limit to how much a Sa'ed will be able to actually understand what I'm going through, because it is so different. And especially if I don't share, especially if I don't speak it, especially if I don't say, I've never experienced my body this way ever. And this is completely new to me. So I'm not ready yet to share this new um this new feeling with you yet, or or how I am in this new body with you yet, or things like that. And I think that it was kind of ironic, because all of a sudden I was like, I'm not sure I believe those people anymore that said that it wasn't about the kids. So it's funny that when you say that you kind of, could like traverse it back, I get it. I know. And I think that actually, you know, relating to being a child of divorce, I think part of me was like, oh my God, I better speak what's going on. Otherwise there may become a gap
Yeah.
that I don't know how to overcome otherwise.
Right. And,
Um,
it's interesting because Galit, when most people don't know how to have the conversation because they don't even know what is going on. And
right,
it just, that divide just naturally gets bigger and bigger. That gap gets bigger and bigger. So if you don't
right.
repair it with baby one, baby two isn't going to help.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
and it's hard to have those conversations, but you have to be aware and open and vulnerable and honest that I'm sucking wind right now.
Right.
It's not about
Right.
you, honey, but I could use your support. Here's how you
Right.
can help me. Here's
Right.
what we could do together to grow closer. May not be sexual, but you can have
Right.
intimacy in a lot of ways.
Right, exactly. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because I think that by having these conversations and by kind of showing your vulnerability in a new way, there is a deeper intimacy that can take place that can actually set the foundation for an even more rich relationship, and a richer um, intimate relationship, physically and emotionally.
Yep.
um and I think that there's there's something really powerful about um being able to have the conversations, and also sharing that the, the enormity of these experiences, and also kind of navigating the unknown together,
Yes.
because
Well,
there's a lot of
you want to
that.
also open that space to have your partner share too, because it's
Right.
not just our experience because we birthed the child. That's our own,
Right.
but
Right.
their role as a dad or mom or dad and dad, whatever it's going to be, their role is
Yeah.
also having an impact on them. And we have to make space to hear their story,
Yeah.
their journey as well. And
Yeah.
if you can do that, boy, what a great foundation you
Right.
set for the
Right.
marriage
Right.
and for the kids.
Yeah, and actually, in that respect, I want to say that through our conversations, I was also able to see, how Astael transitioned into fatherhood, which I think is another thing that is not spoken about and is very challenging and difficult. And there's, if you can, there's kind of a disconnect of identities, and a reconnect of identities, if you will, right? We kind of lose a little bit about of who we were, and now we have to kind of re-navigate and connect as who we are in these new roles.
Yeah.
And each one of us kind of has a lot of pressure, and there are a lot of expectations, and we're simultaneously going through all these changes internally. But if we can really come together and speak them, and not have it necessarily be sometimes we get into these kind of competitions of like, oh, well, I'm more exhausted, or I'm more tired, or I'm more overwhelmed, or but
Yeah.
if we can come together and let go of, it's not a competition,
Yeah.
and just really give space, like you say, for these intimate conversations of, here's everything that I'm going through, and this is how this change and shift has rocked me, excited me, overwhelmed me, and your partner share how they're experiencing this transition. That's intimacy on a different level.
Oh, it's
um
completely, and you know what it does? It set when, if you could do it when the child comes,
right.
right? If you could do it then it becomes part of the lifestyle, it becomes part of the fabric of the marriage
Yeah.
or the relationship. And then you carry that communication into the toddler years, into the teenage years, into
Right.
college years. And so when empty nesting comes, you've created this beautiful relationship where you've been able to be open, intimate, and connected. And listen, it's not bliss all the time. Everyone knows that,
Right.
but it's certainly far better than the shutdown withdrawal that
Right.
ends up happening. And then okay, there's no other option if no one's going to communicate but to
Right.
get out of this.
Right. Exactly. I think that that's kind of, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the withdrawal, right? Because it's easy to confuse the first few weeks kind of postnatal of a kind of almost a withdrawal, and kind of and a bonding just with the baby. But actually, if you can speak it, it's not a withdrawal. It's, you're exhausted, and you're reconnecting, you're refocusing, you're trying to just get your bearings.
Yeah.
um and I think that from someone looking on the outside, it may seem as though you're withdrawing from your partner, or
Right.
from but that's not what's going on. But if you don't name it and speak about it, then it might feel that way.
Right. And that's where
So
that's where those communication skills can come in, and that's where the wisdom comes in about,
right.
working with people such as yourself or myself, where you help teach them to build better, stronger foundations, but you have to want to build that. And that's where I wish there was more information given at the
Right.
in these parenting classes on the relationship rather than on the diaper change
Right.
or the
It's so
swaddling.
true. It's so true,
Swaddle for
because
marriage.
right. Yeah, no, because like you say, that relational space that we're able to create and work through, that's where our kids are going to grow up, and that's what we'll hopefully be left with, when it's empty nest. But it has to start there. And I think actually in that initial transition of parenting and turning, it, that's where it's crucial to kind of almost work at it the most, because it is so new, and it is so
And
overwhelming.
right, but and if you work on it then, which may seem like overwhelming, like one more thing, but the payoff is enormous.
Right.
So your
Absolutely.
return on investment is huge.
Right. It's
You
true.
have to kind of look at it that way.
And also I feel like, you there are actually elements that I didn't share enough of with Asael, especially relating to my infant feeding journey, and all the struggles there. And I don't think I've ever felt more alone. And so I think that when I finally shared, I realized, okay, he can't, there's a limit to how much he can understand, because, he's not feeling it in his body in the same way. But he's here with me, he's alongside me. He's giving me the support that I need. He's part of this.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important to remember, that there's on the one hand, while there is maybe a limitation to exactly, nobody can experience exactly the way you're experiencing, but by sharing, you're at least offering that there's a bridge there. You're closing the gap, and at the end of the day, you are in it together.
Yes. And if your husband or partner doesn't know how to help you bridge that gap, get help.
Right.
Ask, because
Right.
sometimes people just don't know how or
Right.
what to do. And so the earlier you reach out, the better it is. It's not a Band-Aid anymore of a
Right.
problem, because now you've nipped the problem in, in the
Right.
beginning. And so then and then it helps you lay those foundational pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to say, and this is kind of like more optimistic, um, is that there was a part of me that was really worried. I was a very sexual person before we got married and after we got married and before we had kids, and then we kind of had kids, and it was kind of like so far from my mind. I was not interested in sex. My sex drive was not what it had been. And there was a part of me that was really worried that it would never come back in the same way. And that, this was just part of it. I'm a mom now. And so, but I have to say that as my kids get older, my sex drive comes back more and more. And it's really, that's also something I feel like that women don't necessarily speak about. And I think that that's really comforting to me to see, the more autonomous they get and the older they get, I feel like the more I'm able to kind of come back to the sex drive that I know and I'm familiar with. And I have more of that space. I'm able to seek out, the context that I need. I know what I need in order to get into that sexual space. And um, so I think that that's also something that kind of like, to new moms or new parents that are out there listening, like it does, it
Yeah,
does come
it
back.
does.
Intimacy comes back.
It does come back. Our sexual, the sexual part of ourselves comes back, and
Yeah.
it can come back even better. But here's
Yeah.
the piece, though: if you don't lay the foundation for it, your sex drive can come
Right.
back, and then you're looking at a partner.
Right.
You don't
And you're
want
like,
to do it.
ugh. Yeah.
So please know it does come back, but you have to be prepared for when
Yeah.
it comes back.
Right. Right. You have to foster it so that when it comes back, it has something to come back to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
100%.
place to to
Great.
to stop. And thank you so much for sharing, because and being able to have real conversations about things that matter around our being moms and our birthing experiences. So, and intimacy is one that we shouldn't overlook. So I'm really happy to have had
No.
that conversation. All
Yay.
right. We're gonna stop here, and please, anybody, come on for part 3. And in part 3, we're going to be talking about support and where to get some help. And we'll see you in a few minutes. Thanks, Galit.
Bye. Thank you.